Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and we just had a thunderstorm, and it was a pretty exciting thunderstorm because out there in that field, just the other side of that telephone pole, a lightning struck there, and of course that doesn't happen very often, but it was surprising to my grandson who was in the fifth wheel with us, because it was just a great big, it sounded like a cannon. Of course, it happened at the same time that the flash came, and so he'd never even thought about how that worked. But I thought, I wonder if there's a burn spot somewhere out here in the field where the lightning hit. Now, the reason we know it's out there, because we weren't watching, but I have an app on my phone, a weather app. It's called WeatherBug, and if you haven't tried it, you should see if you like it. It's the best weather app I've ever found. And one of the things that it has, it shows you a map that is current to the lightning flash, lightning strikes. And so as soon as, and my grandson loves it, as soon as that happened, he grabbed my phone and he zoomed in on that map, and sure enough, it was right there in that field, right about where I'm looking. So I came out with a drone, because I can't get over there. They don't like you getting out in there. I came out with the drone and thought I'd look around. But of course it was raining when the lightning hit, so it's very unlikely that there's a burn spot. Anyway, I couldn't find one anywhere. But let's just go for a ride, and I'll tell you another story. I forgot about this story, and I thought, well, I'll share this story on my next video. In my last video, I was talking about my 41 Ford pickup, and how I had to go slow to keep from throwing a rod. Now, the reason I say that is because when I was going to college, my first year of college, my folks paid my way. And that was pretty nice, but I didn't have any transportation, and that's why they quit paying my way the second year, because I bought a motorcycle. And so because I didn't have any transportation up there, and I lived 100 miles away from home, and if we wanted to go downtown, we had to walk and so forth. So anyway, that first year I had no transportation, and so there was a couple of guys in the dorm who went together, and for $75, they purchased a 1938 Buick four-door sedan. And it looked pretty nice. It wasn't in bad shape or anything. And back then, in the 60s, a 1938 vehicle wasn't a rare vehicle. It was a piece of junk, and that's how they looked at it. So they got it for $75, and they decided they'd make some money with it by hauling people down to the Seattle area from up in Bellingham, where I was going to college. And so the first weekend that they had it, they asked who wanted to go, and I wanted to go. I think they charged you like $10 or something, because they were going to try to make some money. So I paid them my $10, and we left on Friday afternoon and started out down the road. So and there was a 4-lane freeway back then that went most of the way between Bellingham and Seattle. And so we're traveling along on the freeway. I think the speed limits back then were 60 miles an hour. And so we're going along, and we were in the left lane, and this little VW Bug came around on the right side and was going to pass the Buick. And so as he come around on the right side and came to pass us, well, the driver of the Buick decided he didn't want to let anybody pass him. So he's racing this guy, and they get up to, I think they were going over 70 miles an hour, when all of a sudden we heard this big bang up under the hood, and the engine started knocking really loud. So he pulled over, because what he had done is he had thrown a rod, and that's where I learned my lesson not to go fast with an old car. Well, so what happened was we pulled over, and there was a little hole, maybe about a 2-inch diameter hole in the side of the engine block, but it still ran. And so he decided, well, let's just keep going. We got a long ways to go yet. And so everybody piled back in, and we pulled out on the freeway, but we weren't going fast this time. I think we were going about 40 miles an hour. I wasn't sitting up front, so I wasn't paying attention, but we were going a lot slower. And so we lumbered along and on the freeway, and then Everett is north of Seattle. And as we were coming through Everett, it was beginning to get dark, and we were coming down this little incline on the highway, and all of a sudden we heard this bang crash, and something was hitting the bottom of the floor. And I looked out the back window, and there was this chunk of metal bouncing down the highway behind us. But he didn't pull over. He didn't stop. He just kept going. He says, "It's still running." And so we clunked along, and we went from, we left Everett and got all the way down to North Seattle, which is the Queen Anne Hill area. And we got down there, and he apparently lived somewhere in that area. And so he turned off the highway, and it took some, roads to get to where he lived. And then we had to go up a little hill, and it wouldn't make it up the hill. And so we stopped there, and then he said, "Well, we'll just leave it here." And so we grabbed our luggage, and we made it on foot to where he lived. And then, of course, everybody had to call their parents or whoever it was they wanted to come and get them. And so I called my parents. Now, back in those days, a call from North Seattle down to the Seattle-Tacoma Airport area was long distance. And by the way, they didn't have any internet. There was no such thing as a cell phone. All the phones were connected to a wire that was hooked into the wall. And so I had to call my parents. And, of course, then you tell the operator, you dial O and you get operator, or dial 0, and you get operator, and then you tell her you want to reverse the charges to whatever number you're trying to call. And so my parents answered, and they said, "Will you accept the call from blah, blah, blah," And so they did. And I told them our predicament. And, of course, it was dark now. I don't know what time it was. I've forgotten, and it was late. It was late. So my parents said, "Okay." So back then, by the way, there was no internet, no GPS. And so they had a paper road map, and they got in the car with it and a flashlight, and started driving up through Seattle, up to North Seattle. And then, of course, they followed, the road, and they got on the street that my friend was living on, and or he wasn't a friend, the guy that owned the car. Anyway, so they got on the street, and they go down the street, and they very carefully look at addresses. And sure enough, after about an hour of waiting, or about that, anyway, finally they show up, and they pick me up, and they take me home. And, of course, that was another time that I didn't make a whole lot of points with my folks. But anyway, because then, Sunday afternoon, somebody had to find a way to get me back up to school 100 miles away. So anyway, I went home, and of course, all of us, probably to this day, if they're still alive, we have a good memory of when we went from Bellingham, Washington, down to Seattle in a 1938 Buick 4-door sedan. And it's one of those things that I've never forgotten. Of course, I forget a lot of things, and then I remember them later on, and then I don't remember them later on, and that's how it goes. But here I am coming into land, so I should probably say thanks for watching my videos, and there's a nice big smile. God bless.